Labor Day weekend.
About 20%.
We was there. The kids ran up to the bathroom.
That's all right, don't.
He's swearing, I got my mother-in-law on the phone.
Really?
I said, would you stop for a minute? We eat. Yep, great.
I knew I was feeling positive at some point.
You need to move?
Nope.
There's something right here.
Is there a plug?
Not sure what
Yeah,
you're
it looks
looking
like it's a
for.
network.
Oh. Looking for regular outlet?
Yeah.
I mean, they're all the tables.
It's hard to tell because the tables have a drop down, so you can't see
There's one right here
behind
behind you. Perfect. Oh, I didn't see him. Yeah, he had something. Oh, that's him. Hey, I was just asking the other day. Is it worth bringing? Okay, so there's nothing else. I had two things written down and I wasn't sure. Oh, you're doing what? I don't want to bring things up. We don't need to yet.
Okay.
They don't want
I didn't even know she had. Oh, God. That's just to do with the timing.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Call the order of Jefferson County Local Development Corporation meeting Thursday, November 5th. No, we don't have a flag, but I still would like to stand in pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stand. Floor for privilege of the floor, if anyone wants to speak. We received the minutes from our October 1st meeting. Is there any additions and or corrections?
I'll move to accept.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Treasurer's report, page 10.
It's kind of your packet, this is our first month of the new fiscal year. The starting budget's a little, about 70,000 more than prior year. Break even on a linear basis, about 96,000 a month. We've achieved a little over 97,000, so we're on target right now for 1 month. Operational expenses were about 84,000, higher budget than last year. Again, it's a balanced budget, so we're about 96,000 per month spending on a break-even basis, and we only spent 67, so below budget. So thus far, 1 month looks great. Let's just repeat it for 11 more, and I think we'll be in good shape. Page 11 of our packet. This is, I guess, 11, 12, and 13 are snapshots of the major programs within the LDC. Nothing to really report there. I guess just to, under the, what is this one, ag expense, we had about 12,500 left over last year's budget, so this is kind of a little higher, so maybe history will repeat itself, but it's a good program, it's well funded, as well as their expenses, same with manufacturing and marketing. A little bit higher budgets, they all had money left over from the prior year, so we'll see how 2021 affects us with regards to in-person travel and other expenses that we had less revenue. 14 is our balance sheet. Our quick assets are 226,000 higher than prior period. Our receivables are 20,000 higher than prior period. Total current assets are 247,000 higher than prior period. Total assets are 245,000 higher than prior period. Our total liabilities gone up 270,000. Just a note to that, most of it's just the grants that will be expended and spent during the year, so they're treated as a liability early until we spend them. Total capital is down 24,000 from prior period. Page 15 of your board packet are our major receivables and loans for the LDC. They're all stated as current or interest as resolved by the board, and the board will allow no change to that. Okay. No change. So I would make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? Comments? On the motion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Audit committee. The resolution on page 27.
You want to do it, or you and I were both there, so whichever.
Pretty,
You want to.
pretty simple. It's resolution number 1105, 2020-01. It's a resolution to engage the auditors for the annual audit.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
And once again, we're staying with Bowers and Company. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. Personnel committee. Have two things for personnel committee. First one, a question with regards to, grab my notes here, the use of sick time in the handbook. Our consultants had recommended that we allow or we provide for 49 hours of sick leave to be used on a yearly basis, and the personnel committee really thought that might be too low. And so what we're recommending is 210 hours or 30 days. Now, I think that personally, if someone had filled up sick time and they have major medical issues or something like that, they could always come back and say, hey, you know, I'm gonna use my sick time, I'm going to have treatment for cancer or whatever. I have no issue with that, but I guess with that, I'd like a motion in a second.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said 30 days, is that per year or is that the maximum?
That's per year.
Okay.
No, that's not accrual.
Is there an accrual amount?
Their accrual, our ongoing accrual amount is $700.
Well, what they told us legally is now, but that we're a private, not-for-profit, we're not government, but you can't cap, but you can limit how it can be.
Okay. We don't have a cap on the accrual now, I guess, the state law.
We did, but the one we had when we were IDA was governmental. So when we carried everything over, we just automatically carried that over, not realizing that you could, that cap went away. Okay. Private.
Thanks, Dave.
So, but there would be the opportunity, should someone have an extraordinary event, we could authorize
Yes.
more.
Yes.
And that has been done in the past fall. You know, the crew works as a team, so we know if one of us is out, the responsibility shifts to the rest. And it's been, for the last 50 years or so, worked extremely well in those kinds of situations that occurred. Go back to the board and got permission. So,
You look for a motion.
Yes.
I'll move the amendment to the.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, thank you.
just a note, by the way, Mr. Chairman, the handbook is now completely up to date, as near as we can tell, with the current series of regulations, both on the federal and state level. Given what's going on these days, my guess is we'll want to take a look at that in a year from now and make sure we're still in compliance, because those things are changing on a fairly dramatic basis. We use our legal consultants to help us design that, and it should be good, up to date.
Our labor people are staying on top of all the changing rules.
Second order, I have the great privilege of announcing that the Personnel Committee recommends the Jcida become our CEO as of January 1st. Dave has been with us since 2009. He's been a member of our community, working in our community for a lot of years. Right out of college.
Not as many as John.
Right out of college.
Right out of college, yeah, so about
Up to
20 years before that.
He's got a master's in business administration, and I think every one of us know that the quality of the work that Dave puts out. So what we're recommending is a 3.5-year contract, start January 1, 2021 through September 30th, 2024. With that, I'd entertain a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? You're stuck, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Don, Don is 30 hours of sick time. No, 30 days.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I am absolutely delighted that the board chose to engage Mr. Zendak. He has been a star performer for the agency for a lot of years. We've gradually shifted more and more responsibility to him. He shoulders those responsibilities with character and with professionalism, and I will virtually guarantee you will see an uptick in the performance of the agency with Dave at the helm. So my congratulations to him. He's a good guy. I miss working with him, that's for damn sure. And he's got a great team that backs him up. So all in all, it's going to be a good 3.5 years.
I would just add, I mean, it's been a privilege working with Don as well. I mean, when I first came back to the community, working in the nonprofit community, met Don when he was a radio station. He's one of those, whether met whether you're supporting that not-for-profit that's going for advertising dollars, or sponsorship, or seeing the Rotary Club is one of those model people in the community really admire and respect. So when I first came back to the community to see someone like Don and engage with him periodically, and get, you know, kind of work with him at this point in my career as well, and well.
And the swearing you hear from his office is not directed at me. Thanks.
Alrighty, alternative energy.
Well, we haven't met since last month. I thought there was kind of a lull in projects, but talking to Don on the way in, I guess there's several interested parties that may be making applications to us. I guess the only other thing is, are we going to discuss the champion, or is that going to be later on, or just?
Here's what I know. All of you have seen a correspondence from the supervisor of the town champion. Some of you have actually asked already for some kind of a reaction from us. I ran this information in the letter by Matt Moses, who is going to join us later on. And his comment to me was that the IDA had exercised its appropriate action throughout the process, and that he felt there was no further reaction necessary from the board of directors based on Supervisor Ferguson's comment. Last night, I ended up in a discussion with Attorney McCullough, who is also representing the developer in that particular project. And so I asked him if he had any reaction to what was characterized in Mr. Ferguson's response, and he said that he would be on the call this morning sometime, as soon as he got off another call, and try to explain the developer's position. However, he felt that Mr. Moses' advice to us was on target, that we needed to respond, that we had done what we had been authorized to do. We held our public hearings. Mr. Ferguson commented during those public hearings. We reacted to the comments that Mr. Ferguson made during that hearing, and we ran what is called an assignment, which is basically a sale of the project. We ran that to ground. Sale occurred during the process of approval. However, we checked with the attorneys on both sides of the equation, and those attorneys said that the assignment was properly handled so that there should have been no misinformation. Now, personally, I think perhaps somebody did not communicate well with Mr. Ferguson, which is why he was concerned. I wish we could have done a better job of communication, but in this day of COVID, it's very difficult. So we may very well get a further update on that. I don't know what the board feels about it. The legal advice we have, and again, Matt will also be joining this morning. Joe, I don't know if you want to jump in here at any form of question. I don't want to preach it, but memorize the position. But his reaction was, we should sit tight, not necessarily.
I don't disagree.
I talked to Dave because I received a phone call from the assessor. He was asking questions about the appraisals he had done on the project. And I got the impression from him that the issue tended to revolve around decommission, that they were waiting for information from the assignee, which is DSD, relative to the decommission. So it seems to me like there's only, I mean, they don't issue a permit.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
Exactly.
but, well, I agree with Mr. Moses' analysis that he followed the procedures. I think some things were brought up that we could do better through the process. And one of them may be that we're gonna have to start performing a written appraisal on each of the projects. Say it's 4 2-megawatt ones, maybe we require them to submit appraisal. So there's more current information. You know, the incentives for dropping annually on these projects So how long can you rely on the analysis that was done on the project in 2020 for the town to use that as the project in 2022? So I think that the alternative energy, thing, we should have a discussion on really coming up with target. We were faced with a bunch of projects early on. We worked our way through, and I think we did very decent. But I think we should come up with, okay, here's the project to support water, and then stick to those. But I think that's a discussion we need to have with the alternative.
I would only offer this observation, Paul, and you're right, we should kick this around, but at the moment, we're still using a pilot, a financial remuneration for the communities of 5,500 a megawatt plus 2%, which we all agreed on. And that was based on a performance of one of the earlier oil projects, which, by the way, we have to close it. I'll make an observation there. But the point I make to you is that 5,500, based on what energy prices have done during the interim, is pretty strong. And I'm getting pushback from developers right now that number is probably pretty high. And thus far, I've been able to say to developers, look, if you want to continue the process quickly, you're going to accept what we're proposing to do, which is you don't have to do an appraisal, but we're going to get a high end on the value. But again, this is exactly however you choose to do this, is what we want to do going forward.
That's the right attitude. If you want it done quick, here's our rules.
That's
Want it done.
That's
your way.
basically what I've
Let's
said.
take 8 months and look at an appraisal and run everything down. If we've been forced to do things quickly for the developer schedule, and I have no issue with that, but we shouldn't be paying for the lack of premium in that regard.
Well, that's exactly what we've been doing. And of course, the problem they have here is as the Energy Committee knows, there's all kinds of incentives that are out there. Some of those decline as the periods go on, as time goes on. We're also facing winter, and they have limitations as to what they can do in that time. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, but I just want the board to be aware that at the moment, we're, I think, getting high end of the monies coming back to the community, which is really what we're trying to do. So anyway, that's up to you guys.
One question I had, going back to the appraisal. Well, average, figures don't lie, I understand. When we accept their appraisal from them, the county is kind of indicated, they wouldn't agree, I'm sure, with some of the appraisals from the energy companies.
The county established a policy, they wanted the appraisal, so they've chosen the appraiser. Okay, the same information that they have to submit to get the appraisal done, I believe they have to submit to NYSERDA to get through their process for getting,
So there's the check and balances, the county.
so we're gonna use the appraiser, they're gonna have to use the appraiser, one of our choice, but we would continue to use the one that's the county's choice.
It certainly wouldn't hurt to have a 1.5 megawatt project, because I know you mentioned in some board meetings, there's a lot of fixed costs that don't change. There's licensing fees that if it's 1 megawatt or 5, you pay a single. I mean, there's certain things that just
The interconnect charges are the same.
they obfuscate, some of the overall numbers. And I agree with you, 5,500 is very strong for like 1.5 megawatt project, and we would probably be 30% tax abatement versus 50. Even if you really ran the numbers out, we could do small projects. But you know what? You want to take more time, the developer takes more time to get back to the UTEP value 50%. It's time. So whether their importance is a quick start to get grants to actually help fund their balance sheet elsewhere, pay us a premium, or take time and lose those grants, that's a business decision. We don't care. We don't honestly should not care ever.
All we
My
do is
opinion.
we presented what we think is the appropriate action based on the Energy Committee and said, if you want to move this along, this is our process and we'll move it quickly. And thus far, that has been the most compelling reason to go ahead with these projects here. Other counties are having a little bit of difficulties, according to Mr. Collin, among others, who is now involved in any of these things around the state. So, but anyway, that's up to the energy
There's
committee.
just an article about one of these utility scale ones in Chautauqua County, where there's huge uproar. Thousands of acres, they're gonna be in the same boat. If any of these utility scale ones don't, any close to, being approved in this county. So,
Well, that's what you're right, Paul. That's gonna be a whole different dialogue, I'm sure, so.
I've got one kind of minor question with regards to everything that was said, it's more of what's board opinion or staff's opinion. So everything that's going on with this project, back to the facts, I'm not sure, my opinion, it's not the IEA's responsibility to be the mediator to get in front of the developer, the developer's council of the town. This is a town matter. We've approved the pilot, if in fact we trust Mr. Council Moses's opinion that we've done everything correctly, let's be silent and do nothing more. All we then do is say there's a defect. If we start getting involved, my opinion, you're just saying there's a defect in our process. I think trying to help could have the wrong optics, and then plus it just takes staff time away from the report back. My opinion, and I don't know if anybody disagrees with me entirely or whatever. So there's someone to throw that out there.
I agree with you. Michael?
I think the deeper concern right now is to ensure that we get closing on the oil projects. For example, Joe was sitting here waiting.
We're waiting for
Their attorneys.
Waiting for their counsel.
Yeah.
The two ones. We'll close 4 of them.
As Don and David Marshall can probably attest, I don't think we're looking for more things to do, so being a counselor mediator on a town matter is, I don't think it's in our bylaws that we have to do that. If we feel that we've done everything possible up to this point, which I think we have, the right way.
Well, wait, it's not under construction on either of those two.
No, they haven't. And like I said, we're waiting for their counsel to contact us so I can get it closed.
To Bill's point earlier, Dave, we probably will see a minimum of 3 more applications immediately for alternative energy projects, and probably 5 on top of that within the next couple of months is my guess based on what I'm being told. One of those projects is the one that serves the BOCES group. That'll be one of the 3 that will show up very quickly.
Well, here, you bring that one up, that one is virtually complete. And how do you get past button 4 with that project? I mean, they've been well aware of the process for a long damn time. And how many emails have you shared with us where you talked to them and nothing has occurred other than we're gonna come see you sometime?
I can tell you that from, I represent that town, and they initially were coming to the town for a 487 pilot, and told them up front, the school district had opted out. The only way they're gonna get the school district involved in the pilot is through the IDA. And the last conversation we had where I finally got that through their head was at the beginning of the summer. And I directed them to Don at the time. And they've been working on it for months before that. So,
That was how it built up, what's the shed place there,
Yeah.
I go past it. They look like they're almost to the point of energy.
It's just that aside, this is a little early in the process, but the Energy Committee will hear this at some point in talking with Kevin McCollum, who is representing Richardson, who is the developer of these 3. I asked yesterday, the fact that the product is being used by not-for-profits, which is the BOCES districts, does that change how we approach the developer? Because the developer this is a private company that's doing this on behalf of the BOCES. And so at the end of the argument or discussion yesterday, Kevin and I agreed that we would not change the approach for Mr. Richardson on these series of projects, even though the total output of those projects are designed for the BOCES schools. So,
Well, for that consortium, but there was also a recent television case that overturned the Cornell case. So the fact that it's being used for that, that's taxable.
You know, but they had already, they had a property that was located.
yeah, well, still, it's similar theory. But you know, because based on, you know, the ultimate end user, they were looking for a much lower per megawatt. Right.
And we dispelled that.
Yeah.
We dispelled that, yes.
Fill an application out, we do a cost benefit analysis, and I think
Oh,
we'll deal with that.
sure.
There's
Some
numbers on
challenges
line.
to that one, I guess.
We're just debating theory right now.
We don't even have an application yet. I'm kind of raising these issues because someday I suspect as we consider this application, we're going to face these questions. I want that one was important to me because it would set precedent. I wanted to make damn sure that we're still essentially dealing with a private entity rather than.
They were initially using council on all. It's to our benefit that they pay a check.
Yes, absolutely. Because he completely agrees.
Well, clearly, an alternative energy say, if we move forward with the project that's already built, we're going to spot for the
That's up to you guys. You're the bosses. The but-for question, Joe, let me just see if I can clarify that one more time. This is really not a legal requirement, but it's considered to be best practice. Is that how
That's
it?
pretty much it. I mean, it's not something that's a statutory requirement, but it's part of your consideration. Is the need for
The abatements.
for the financial assistance. Yeah.
Okay, so Joel.
Here's the application, we'll want an appraisal, that's my position. Get all the facts, and we can debate them. It's easier to debate facts.
That's what we do. Incidentally, the supervisors from these affected towns are calling on a regular basis, trying to figure out what's going on, because in some cases, construction has already started. And these developers have promised the town officials that they're working with us to accomplish a pilot. And that is not really the case.
We regularly let this town know.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I figured you did, but that wasn't precisely certain.
Deborah and I up in Philadelphia have become close friends.
Okay, let's move on to building and grounds. I know we're gonna have other discussions in the IDA, but, Greg, I don't know if you're gonna have to leave. Yeah, so can you give us a quick overview for the benefit of anyone that might have to leave?
Well, speaking about targets, this is a beauty. As you know, we have identified and are working closely with a client for the remaining space here at the Arsenal Street building. We've had several meetings with that client now, the latest of which was Tuesday. We have made significant progress. I don't have an agreement signed yet with them because there are so many questions related to their relationship here in the building with the Y project. I'm going to ask Dave to help fill in around the edges here because he and I are working on this together. But basically, we're pretty confident now we will have identified for you quickly the client for our space. Part of what's going on here is this project for the Y has become such an enormous project and influence within the building itself. We may end up having to move the space that we allocated originally from the IDA that we would have as our lease space. We may have to move that space within the building itself to assist construction. And we would do that in concert with both the Y and the client that we're working. And both are aware of this, both are appraised about how it will impact what we're going to do going forward. And so that's fine. We haven't settled yet on the actual square foot cost that should be allocated for this. We have a number in mind. We also have talked briefly about the significance of the leasehold improvement loans, which they're going to look to us for. I'm anticipating that would be somewhere in the $500,000 range, although again, we're still not there yet. We have 4 parties that are being influenced by all of these discussions, so you can't do one without the other. And one of those is Washington Street Properties, which will be impacted by construction below. as we reinforce the building above to carry on all these activities, they're gonna disrupt the Washington Street property, folks, like Carthage Bank and, Family Dollar, those kinds of things. So we're working to try to satisfy all those concerns. We're doing this by developing a ground lease. Dave and I spent a fair amount of time with, our esteemed counsel on the phone, yesterday as we began hammering out this ground lease. I think we have, most of it in hand. Joe?
Conceptually, we've come to an agreement. I just need to see the document, but,
There will be some additional items attached to the ground lease, which, will include some more specs.
Is there ground lease for the whole building, the two lessees?
No,
So this is just for the Y portion, not for the other
Right.
client?
All right, this is strictly the one.
Is the other client considering to buy versus lease? Sorry.
ground is the Y has to be separate, but it's tied to the.
No, I understood it had to be separate, I just wasn't sure if there was the other applicant looking at leasing versus buying.
Yes, and we are working, those two are working hand in glove. The lessor of our space and the Y, essentially we're working in one unit, trying to make it all happen. It won't happen, frankly, unless we do, because there's so many interconnections. Just think of parking and sharing restrooms and common area hallways and all the construction activities that are going to happen here in the building in the very short time frame ahead. So Joe fortunately has been able to hammer out some of these agreements, and I think we're in pretty good shape at this point. We have some other issues yet to resolve. We have taken some interim steps. I put in a policy about COVID here because now we have so many individuals coming in and out of the building. We'll see Jerry now has our policy out there in the sign-in sheets. We are going to have to sit and do some detailed work with Washington Street properties because frankly, I'm not exactly sure what the impact is going to be on them. It'll be significant, there's no question about it.
It does help those worth noting the Washington Street property primary is on the Y project. So,
And I think,
that'll improve coordination.
at today's point, I think they, Washington Street Properties, recognize the enhanced value that this project will bring to those businesses down below. However, it's trade-off. We may disrupt their business for 6 months, if you think about it.
How much longer before we get the minutiae worked out with why and actually transfer that money? Is it this year still?
Yeah, we had a very long conference call with the Y and their attorneys yesterday. As I said, we came to conceptual agreement on the terms of the ground lease. We needed them to consider. Agree to all of those things. I just, the attorney putting the revisions together for my review. I anticipate that what will happen is I'll put that within the next couple of days. The intention, I think, is to get the ground committee for its review, so we can come back to the full board with a recommendation on it. Probably there'll be a request for a special meeting to do that. Why? Extremely anxious to take possession.
And they obviously have the money
Yeah,
ready to.
the closing on the initial lease payment, 500,000, probably is a few months away, but they have agreed to assume the carrying cost.
Yeah, that was good. That was my follow-up. I mean, right now we're coming into winter.
They're full agreement that once they take possession, they'll be responsible for the carrying cost, but there's also a due diligence period in there, and until that is completed, they won't be in a position to make the one-time payment.
And is their design have to transform a bit more before, as Don was saying, this leased or sold space is determined exactly where it is and all of that square footage to the range?
We have a great concept. I think I sent the video out. If I did not remiss, I will. But there's a conceptual video out there, what it might like. It's going to be an amazing project, and I can tell you that our both parties that we're working with are deeply involved in this concept. So, it should be a really positive thing. we have other issues we're working on, like parking, for example. You know, we can't, we're in no position to transfer, for example, our rights to parking in the facility. So we're working with the city to get that done. Dave and I have met with city officials, and we're pretty confident that they are willing to support this. But we need to know things like what is the dedicated parking number for each one of these projects, and a variety of other things. And so there's a lot of moving parts that have to come together, but we're gradually picking those apart. And we have a cooperative spirit amongst all of the players, which makes our work so much easier.
Yeah, the negotiations are not really adversarial.
Why, when you spend through any of the 3 parties.
And as far as the exact determination of where the spaces are gonna be, that's something that will be determined during the due diligence period. You know, and if for some reason they can't come to terms, then, you know, the line can always walk. You know, still have it.
I mean, question for you on the other applicant that is considering the other space, we have, I don't know how to go long term, but like a letter of commitment or a letter of intent, or reason to do this all in good faith.
I would call them good faith negotiations,
But they're serious, and they understand the numbers and the square footage and everything seems to meet their needs at this point.
they've had staff, their own staff, working in this building now for 3 or 4 months. We've had numerous meetings, conversations with them. They wouldn't have invested the kind of money. And when we announce, we're not going to make the announcement as to who that is, they are, but when they make that announcement, you'll understand what we're saying here, that this is it'll be a marriage made in heaven, in my opinion. I don't think we could have possibly identified a better tenant for our cooperative space here. Because you will find both of these entities will serve each other in a variety of ways throughout the 30-year life of this project. And we're going to just keep in mind now that the agency remains a landlord now for 30 years. Remember, we originally talked about the possibility, Chairman David and I spent hours talking about, you know, what do we sell this place? Do we act as a tenant? Are we building the grounds of it? But at the end of the day now, with what's going on with OEA, we're here. This won't be our relationship for 30 years. We won't be here, none of us, but somebody will. And so we're trying to figure it all out and make sure we don't trip on them.
Let's assume the IDA wanted to sell our responsibility for that 30 years. Could we transfer that to another?
The reason we're stuck with it for that 30 years is because of the grant.
But is that a transferable responsibility?
I don't know, what do you think?
I don't, if it comes, we can ask, but it's pretty clear, it just says as a recipient, you're basically committing to owning that building for the 30-year federal center.
Well, but it's my understanding, it's got to be a governmental entity, right? Can we transfer that to another
Well, it was
governmental?
just a theoretical thing, because at one point we were talking about selling the building. So I assume our lease has indemnification.
Oh, yeah.
All through it there. I know Don's constantly sending out emails about what our insurance.
That was one of the provisions in the lease we were requiring them to handle. So,
And I know there's an event being planned here around Christmas time, so that'll be done under this new lease, and it's all the lodge's responsibility.
No, not necessarily. We have an MOU in place to take care of anything on the interim level.
They're gonna get special event insurance and work insurance,
Exactly.
kind of 15 council, everybody else look at it.
Yeah, because for that event, the Y is gonna be using their own, what's gonna be their own space as well as some of the space that we're keeping. So
We want to make sure that if somebody comes in to look at the trees, they fall and hurt themselves, we're not.
No, that's
the
true.
first line
Until
of
they take
defense.
beneficial occupation, I mean, it's
I'm
our
more
problem.
worried about the cluster coming back.
Well, no, right, that's exactly right.
But as long as they adhere to the CDC and our governors, that orders for gathering, I guess it's okay. So
that's part of the reason they like this facility, because,
Very large.
it's large, and they're basically, you know, the units, there's a unit with a table, they're taking the table part out, so basically you'll have the 4 semi-walls of the unit. So you're gonna go down the ends, and they'll be like little rooms, a tree, and they'll be decorating a room around it, so basically people just gotta be filing through their distance and come in one way and go out the other.
That's another reason
the
we
whole
put
new world
a
of
policy
liability
in
around
place.
this stuff. One last question about the building. What are we doing with the furnishings? I see that when the number comes back, it was not a very impressive number. We just gonna let that go with the.
No, we're working with the client, with our client right now to identify their needs. I sent them a bunch of information on the furniture day before yesterday, and they're looking at it. They're going to be interested in quite a bit of what we have in our portion.
This is the non-white one?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I clarified.
Well, the Y is interested in from it as well.
So we're trying to sort all that out, and what the intent is, once we sort out what the needs are, what's left will then have to come back to building and grounds so that you guys can say, what do you want to do? We can put it up for sale, we can, hold a public auction, we can, whatever. But that will be up to building and grounds to decide what's left. But Paul's point is dead on. When I negotiated this, I negotiated the furniture in 50, thinking this would be another couple of $100,000 that we would have to use. Now it's a question that we may have to pay to have somebody take it away, and so parts of it just, yeah, who would have guessed? I mean, it just, you can't foresee what the future's gonna be.
One last question. We talked about there's not an agreement on the division of space between RLSD and the Y. It's RLSD that's not going, is going to have to modify their plan for the Y. I think the Y is the driving user of the building, and I guess it's what the remainder is it usable by our prospective tenant, then they're the ones that are gonna have to use it.
And Paul, that's the attitude of the potential tenant. They want to be in the building, but they express their deference to whatever works best for Y, as long as they're in the building. So that's good.
They have an incentive to make that work.
You will see that,
Well, you explained it in the email that you sent, so.
One observation, I'm pretty sure that way is, having watched this building transform itself after year and after before the purchase, this board was pretty solidly behind the notion that we need to get out of real estate business. Now, because of the good marriage, and the fact it was done with grant, we're gonna own this building for the next potentially 30 years. We are going to be in the real estate business in a bigger way than we've ever done before. This leads to a question: as this build out happens, the building and grounds committee, and staff here, I can see it's going to be very consuming. Talk about solar projects. This project is going to start to demand a lot of our staff time, and board's time for building and grounds. Which leads me to a question: what year was this building built? Does anybody recall?
And here is, I'm trying to think when I turned 16, I bought a rifle with that.
The rules
For a long
I
time.
think it was in the 40s or the 50s. Our company was temporarily located.
So, none of this is, this whole building was built before there were any such thing as building codes. Right?
Probably.
no, I agree. I don't think so.
There were codes where
Modern
these
building.
not modern building codes, maybe clarify.
There were building codes.
They weren't modern.
Probably the 70s.
There were building codes in the 30s.
Well, when
They
convergence,
weren't modern.
when Street came in here and they started renovating this building, they would have had to draw up the codes available at that time. I mean, it's sprinkled, isn't it?
71.
This building was built.
Remember, there was a thorough investigation.
So,
Rob, the Millwork building was, the original building was something more.
Oh, okay, so this isn't the original one. I don't know my water tank, I'm not from here, sorry.
One of the thoughts that, is on the table, and it won't be my decision, but just so you're aware, ahead in the back of my mind, this becomes a burden to the agency. We're gonna have to build in some kind of building superintendent or somebody who may want to track on this. And I don't know what that is. We did not really understand we were that Dave's things he's gonna have to worry about is how we manage this facility. There are other things that we have, but how do we manage it? You know, right now, my thought is, and this again is a thought is to keep Jerry around because he is a tremendous resource. He's been in the building for a lot of years. He knows what makes it tick. And also, you know, we need somebody to kind of keep track of under control. We're gonna have, if you go see what it's gonna look like if we get two companies in here building new facilities and so on. It's gonna be, you know, I've been through this before. It's gonna be pretty wild. So we need somebody to act as track.
Hopefully our lease is written, so our day-to-day role or month-to-month role is managing the facility for 30 years minimal.
Right.
There wasn't
Collecting the monthly rent is our only obligation.
You certainly want to do that if you can. I'm just saying that there may be a time where we need to manage it better.
I'd say stay out of it.
In essence, why, I mean, the way that the lease is written, in essence, why it's not doing it now, it's just control of underlying vehicles. And so it's a 30-year lease in essence. It has,
Is your plan to have agreements between Y and our tenant for like roof repair or that? Are we building reserves for replacements for those things? Because let's face it, the years, replace the years.
and I think that's a good point. We should have, we should require those agreements, but the Y as, you know, basically being a tenant here, I think we have to build in their responsibility for all of those future things.
I would assume you do that based on prorated share of the space.
Right.
Sure. And no matter how well we orchestrate the leases, I'm just telling you, there is going to be a constant relationship going on here. There is right now. You know, I spend a fair, I don't want to exaggerate this, but some time working between Washington Street properties, what was then the call center and so on. We have a situation right now where there is a possible claim for injury down below. Well, you know, these things had to be managed. You can't just walk away from them. So, and I'm telling you, in 30 years, things will change. We're going to still be managed it, no matter how well we do it. But certainly, anything we can build into the lease as by way of protection is all that. Great.
Okay, we have a 9 o'clock Zoom meeting coming up.
I got a quick question. So the potential tenant is gonna work with the Y, so there's 14,000 square feet that we're gonna own, may not be just 14,000 square feet, is that correct?
Correct.
My only concern is that take that 14,000 square feet, put it somewhere else in the building.
Less than.
It's less value.
Yep.
So I wanna make sure that we have a long-term lease, to make sure that we pick up some of that value.
Well, I think that's a good point, Ken. You know,
Because if they leave 10 years from now, that space somewhere else, we may not get as much more.
we predicated our planning on 14,500 square feet. Well, if they move and they only require 12,000 square feet, the income we anticipated from the 14.5 is less. So the question is, how do we protect the agency from that decline?
You know, maybe the Y should, if they're gonna take some prime space for their use, maybe they should pay a little bit more for that space then.
With all these things, we'll begin to zero in on and we'll bring the building and ground.
If you're gonna give up something,
Well, I think that's a
down.
good point, Ken. Their $500,000 purchase fee was more, well, square
Right,
footage
I'm
was.
saying,
If they get a
space, maybe
700
we
square
should
feet
negotiate that
more,
$500,000.
they should put another.
I think what Ken is saying is we looked at this corner of the building as what that would lease out for when renovated. If they're put in the back corner on the backside of Court Street, a new tenant, if we lose a tenant and they go in there, that may lease for a totally different number than projections for here. But that really wouldn't lease. What is the term of the lease?
But also,
We
why
would be
should we get
talking-
more square
I would
footage
hope
over
our lease would be to the
$500,000?
term of any construction financing.
Well, certainly, you know, that's part of what you build in.
So.
And having, by the way, having this client as a borrower is good for the agency. This is a very solid customer. So, you know, if we lend them, let's say we lend them 500,000 for leasehold improvements, that's that money is paid back over the term. Well, they're gonna wanna spread that out over 10 years, I would guess, at least, so maybe 15, I don't know. But we can then, Building and Grounds can value the lending amount of money. What is the interest on that money? Dependent on the client. The client is solid, so you can be pretty assured if you said 3% as opposed to 5%, you won't have to try to collect the 5%. It'll be guaranteed at 3, or whatever decision is made. But clearly, you guys are right. I mean, it's influencing the space we had, what value we thought, what we sold, the why, all of this influences, and we're just gonna have to lay this out physically for the board once we understand what that is, and then see what you guys think. At the moment, we're committed to the 500,000 for a variety of reasons. My guess is we're probably committed to that period. And so we'll have to make up any differences on our end of the spectrum if indeed we think that is necessary. I just don't know at this point. I don't have enough information, so.
I would agree, we're committed to that price.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out with the secondary lessee, so be it, but it's the why, it's the driving factor on how many $1 million they.
Total project is the grant's 9.
The whole project is 12 million.
18 to figure all the soft costs.
$18 million, that should be our driving concern, if it didn't work out for the secondary lessee. I will continue to find an appropriate lessee later. So,
And only point I make is the lessee, once you hear who this is, you'll understand that there is value because of the substantial aspect of lessee. This is not a startup business or, a business that has, questionable background. This is a very solid local company performing well for many years. So, that means a lot, and I think our banker would subscribe to the notion that the lender his quality is important when you're making these loans, and it probably impacts the amount of interest you can be willing to charge. So anyway,
Okay, we have a 9 o'clock Zoom meeting, correct?
yes, as far as I know, I do, yes.
I'd like to move down to our resolutions, we take care of that. So on page 28, we have a resolution number 1105, 2020.02 to adopt the retention and disposition schedule, LCS-1.
Moved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Peggy, was I supposed to read all 400 pages?
I read it last night, Paul. You didn't read that.
I slowly start going through it and, ooh, my eyes look over.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, thank you. So Jay's not here. Marshall, were you covering for Jay today?
Well, no,
Are you Jay today?
I'm not. Could never.
You could mention the events he's got coming up, Marshall.
He did sense.
Yes. Yes, anything on manufacturing, Dave?
No, that's just that, last month was manufacturing month. Obviously, we did not arrange the tours for 1,000+ students, but what we did do is, we met regularly with our other partners, workforce, BOCES, the school districts, and both across the 3 counties. What we ended up doing is, we ended up pulling together sort of a resource list for the schools saying, okay, move natural manufacturing, here's some links to resources and some virtual tours that are recorded and available online, including, we were able to get our manufacturers, we got a video with current applications about their process. Eric Paving just gave us one that we were able to upload to GPS site. We've got other companies working on one too, to make more of a long-term resource list on manufacturing careers, just kind of stuff that was online already.
Okay, thanks.
Just wanted to give a quick little update. Continuing to work with our website vendor, expecting to have that deployed in mid-January. I spoke with her yesterday. Our support local program, we're going to be putting out another video piece that's going to be paid for by another one of our partners, and we're excited about that. It's going to have another sort of a little guerrilla marketing kind of feel to it. We have been sponsoring some local events, maybe slightly more than we've been doing in the past. focused on the local things that we have going on to kind of keep all of that stuff afloat. And that's not to say that we're not continuing to do all of our outreach as well, but I've been kind of, leaning on people that I've used in the past, and now I kind of feel like I'm really using them, for discounted and or free, whenever possible, kind of assistance. So that's good. Excited about that. Excited about everything we have. And I also mentioned in the last board meeting our talent attraction, talent and resident attraction piece that we're working on with Drum Country. That's going very well. The RFP is out. And this week we also had some reach out by another potential partner, stakeholder, I would say, interested party in having more people come here as well. And they're excited about joining that effort or doing one maybe that is just kind of a Jefferson County and Lewis County effort, side by side with what we're doing with Drum Country. So that's something that we're excited about. Been a crazy month, and it's been fun too. It's been fun. Thank you. Anybody has any questions on that?
If the board will allow, let me just do a little shout out here to Marsh. We have run through some interesting technical issues over the last month, trying to carry on our business via Zoom and conference and everything and so on. And Marsh has been shouldering most of the technical requirements that we needed, and he's done an amazing job. It was never in his job description when we first hired this poor guy, and Dave and I beat the hell out of him and got him to accept his responsibility. So he's done it extremely well. We appreciate it.
March, would you say you could attribute a lot of this uptick, what you're dealing with right now, you would attribute it to post-COVID changing of the landscape?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we have, we talked about months ago about how, we want to keep our local economy going strong. And there has been a little bit of a change. I mean, again, I've kept up on all of our external outreach, but, I've withdrawn some of the resources that we would otherwise spend on like a YouTube campaign, for example. As we talked about early, about advertising to ourselves when everybody else is kind of, thinking of different things. Everybody's just trying to keep their business going and keep it afloat, even the ones that might. But then we have other crazy, wonderful opportunities that have come along recently. Yeah, I think it's absolutely, there's been a shift in how, things are being done right now. It's in some ways great. Yeah, absolutely.
As we've been approached by different contacts, we want organic proteins. I can supply it. Guess what? I can't get a slot, USDA slaughter else to accommodate that sales opportunity. I'm booking kill dates. I'm booking 6 and 8. It's going to be a year out. Schedule processing opportunities to get to retail.
Jay and I talked about that just recently, about those issues. Jay's all over that. That's not to say that he has the answers, but
It's I want to encourage each of you to watch these webinars that Jay is producing. They have become first-class presentations. The people who are guests are excellent in their field, known internationally, and they are talking about what the future of our community is going to be, because agriculture plays such an important role. So I'm not here to say it, but please, if you get a chance, join that webinar, just to give a sample of what the caliber that Jay is producing of this thing.
The recordings are online too, if you ever want to go back and.
Yeah, and they're great. They really are great. Please take a look. I'm telling you, it'll be worth your time.
And Dave, just point out that
Yes, it's good.
Paul just made a good point though, just for those in the room that weren't here last month when you elected, that Rob Aiken is up there on the screen as well, our new board member.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, I apologize. I thought the meeting was 8:30, so I actually thought I was early. I'm quarantined for 14 days. Unfortunately, my wife contracted COVID-19. She works at North Elementary. She's one of the two teachers. I tested negative. She's doing fine. She has flu-like symptoms, but she seems to be heading in the right direction. And I look forward to being with you in person. So thank you.
Rob, I think you should know that if board members are required to use Zoom, you have to buy the coffee the next time.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, all right. I am very, very pleased to be able to announce to you that we have a guest today from Jcida in Albany, and Jennifer Maneri is one of the key individuals in the new siting process that's underway as a result of some initiatives of the governor. And Jennifer and I have been communicating for a bit of time now, and we have begun to talk about how the IDA, this IDA, may work in concert with Jcida on a couple. Thank you for that. And I'll let you just kind of take it from here. The board is anxious to hear what you have to say.
Sure, thank you. I meet with some of those excellent governor presentations that you were just talking about. I don't know if this one's gonna be world class, but I'm gonna try to get through a few things and hopefully just have some discussion after, because everything I'm gonna present on is just gonna be super high level, and then, if I have questions, I'll try to answer them. If I can't, I'll get back to you after. So, and also, you have not been bugging me at all, and I really appreciate you being patient. All right, so I know you said you guys like to keep it informal, but when we're doing these sorts of things, it's much, I think, much easier to pull up a presentation. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then of course, you won't have to worry about taking notes. That's Abby. I assume I'm gonna do that. All right. So without further ado, and I'm also hoping to sort of clarify, I think when folks think about the new siting process, you might have one particular thing in mind. NYSERDA only has some rules in most ones, so I'm hoping to clarify some of that as well. All right, but before we dig in, and I don't want to waste too much time telling you guys stuff you already know, but I think it's important for anyone who may not be totally familiar with what's been going on at the state to get a little bit of a high level overview on what our goals, policies, different programs are going on, and things like that. So, and part of me, some of the slides are pretty text heavy. I think it's important for when I send them to you after the fact. I'm not going to go through every little thing. Don't worry about reading every little thing. They'll be here for future reference. But super high level, New York has some really ambitious energy goals. We're looking to get 70% renewable energy by 2030 and also 100% carbon-free electric grid by 2040. In order to do that, it's going to take a lot of work. And behind that work, also a lot of money. So one of the ways that we're supporting this is through the Clean Energy Fund. It's a 10-year, $5 billion funding commitment. And it's helping us to implement a lot of programs that will help us reach those clean energy goals. One of those is our annual large-scale renewables solicitation. So this is all the much larger renewable energy projects you might think of, the utility scale stuff, not your residential, PV system, not your small commercial rooftop, any of that. The really large systems that are taking up acres and acres. So we have an annual solicitation where we award funding for projects to eventually be built, and this is what a map of the last 3 years of that solicitation looks like. Looks like Jefferson County has a couple solar projects in the works, which is great, but this just sort of gives you an idea of the scale of renewable energy that we're going to be seeing going in across the state. And of course, we have another solicitation in the works right now, so next year when we get this, there'll be more dots on the map from the 2020 solicitation. In addition to that large-scale initiative, we have our ongoing New York Sun initiative, and this essentially funds all those smaller solar projects like residential, commercial, and large commercial, and even some of the community solar up to maybe like 5 megawatts or so go through this process. It's not competitive. If you do, everything that the program needs you to do to build the project properly, then you get the funding. And then finally, and I could talk for, 2+ hours just about energy storage, and I'm happy to do that another time as well. But just know that with all that renewable energy coming online, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. So to help facilitate its integration into the grid, we're also going to be seeing a lot of battery energy storage systems to help balance that out. And it has a number of other benefits other than just getting renewable energy on the line. We provide grid stabilization and things like that. So again, we talked for 2 hours about it, not going to, but just know that we also have some pretty strong energy storage goals as well. We're looking to get 3,000 megawatts of energy storage online by the year 2030. That's approximately the demand of 40% of the residential households in the state, so it's a lot. And much like solar, we have a good amount of money behind the energy storage initiative as well, $400 million right now. A lot of that's already spoken for, but generally speaking, it's a lot. And of course, technical assistance, which my team, the Clean Energy Saving Team, and NYSERDA provides for local governments to sort of help them prepare for this type of development. So with all that in mind, Don asked me to talk a little bit about the resources that NYSERDA might have to help local governments prepare for all of this influx of projects that I was just referring to. So the team I'm on, the Clean Energy Siting Team at NYSERDA, we're sort of a consultant for, a free consultant for local governments in a way. So our job is to, well, pre-COVID anyway, we used to get in our cars and travel all across the state and meet with local governments, meet with IDAs, meet with counties, et cetera. And we'll host educational workshops, we'll help train code officials, all of these things. But one of the things that's come out of our work are these 2 guidebooks right here, and they're sort of our bread and butter. The solar guidebook has been out for a few years now. It's relatively thick. I don't know if you can still see me in the screen, but there's a lot going on here with the solar guidebook, many chapters. It includes lots of great information. We go through how to navigate payment in lieu of taxes or pilots, of course you all are familiar with that. There's guidance for helping local governments navigate the seeker process and explore their zoning laws. There's a whole chapter dedicated to municipal procurement and includes a model RFP, templates, the unified solar permit, which you may be familiar with, is also part of this guidebook, and that's a streamlined permitting process for those smaller solar systems, residential, small, mid-sized commercial. And on top of that, of course, we have, and it's not listed right here, but we also have a model solar energy law. I think that's probably the most popular part of that guidebook and the thing that we find ourselves helping local governments with most often. I always make a point to mention that we have a Word version of any of the templates and models that are in this guidebook. We post them as Word versions so local governments can take them, edit them as they see fit and do with it what they will, but we think it's a nice starting point so you don't have to spend perhaps quite as much money on lawyers. So it's important just to remember that those resources exist, and anytime someone has a question about them, or perhaps some local governments have reached out to us and said, all right, I took your model law, I made a bunch of edits to it, would you mind reviewing it for us and tell us what you think? And we're happy to do that, and our advice is always take it or leave it. Of course, no one's required to, but we're happy to provide those services. So battery energy storage is a little bit more recent for most of us. So this guidebook is newer. It's also a lot thinner. You can tell there's only a few chapters in it so far, but we expect that to grow at some point in the future as folks let us know what other resources would be helpful. Similar to the solar guidebook, we have a model law for battery energy storage systems in here as well. Again, it's sort of take it or leave it. You can edit it as you see fit, and we're happy to provide advice. There's also an entire chapter in there. We basically just copied the 2020 Uniform Code. The fire code section for energy storage systems is a chapter in the guidebook, so that is easy for folks to reference as well. Fire safety tends to be a very big concern with these systems, so we wanted to make sure and address that. Again, I could talk about these things in depth for hours, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of these resources and, you know, let you know if they're there. I guess I already went through a little bit of the solar guidebook, but this slide here just sort of outlines all of the different sections that are in it, which I already sort of talked about. Maybe you can have this for reference in the future. Similarly, the chapters in the battery energy storage guidebook, like I said, the model law, similar to the unified solar permit, we developed a battery energy storage permit for smaller systems like that. Residential, small commercial. There's an inspection checklist for code officials to use to help them inspect those smaller systems. And like I said, a copy of the 2020 Uniform Code of all the portions of it that apply to energy storage. And you can find all of those resources and more on our webpage here. And it also has our contact information and a link where you can submit a request for technical assistance from the team. Like I said, we're happy to meet with folks one-on-one. We're happy to schedule county-wide training sessions, regional training sessions, you know, whatever it is, just reach out and we're happy to do it. Today, I guess, is sort of a small example of that. And those guidebooks that I mentioned, while we do have hard copies available of them, or on that left-hand navigation side, you can download PDFs of the entire guidebook if you want, or just individual chapters. And again, anything that you might want to edit is also posted there in the Word version too. Okay, so what I think most of you are probably more interested in today is the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act that was passed as part of the state budget back in April. It's intended to, like it says, advance renewable energy, you know, drive economic growth and create jobs. In the end, we're hoping it will streamline the process for environmentally responsible, but also cost-effective siting of large-scale renewable energy projects across the state. And it'll establish tools to help us achieve those goals that I was talking about before, 70% of the state's electricity for renewables by 2030, and 100% clean electric grid by 2040. If you have not had the pleasure of reading through the entire act, it has 3 different components to it. The first is establishing a new office of renewable energy siting, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. That is not NYSERDA, it's a whole new office. That's one clarification I'd like to provide right off the bat. The second component is referred to as the Clean Energy Resources Development and Incentives Program. We don't ever actually call it that in practice anymore. We've shortened it to Build Ready. So this is the second block here is referring to NYSERDA's new Build Ready program, which I've talked to Don about, and I'm going to talk with you folks about today as well. And then finally, the third component of that act was the State Power Grid Study and Program. I'm not really directly involved in that, but it's essentially looking at the grid and where the grid could use upgrades to help accommodate all the renewable energy that's coming online, among other things. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but just know that it was the third major component of that legislation. Okay, yeah, so we're just talking about those first 2 there in red. But first, and again, I feel like I might be preaching to the choir on a little bit of this stuff. I feel like you guys may be somewhat familiar with all these things, but for those who might not be, I think it's important to get a little bit of background on Article 10, the old state siting process that large-scale renewables would go through. So since 2011, large-scale Article 10, but Article 10 was not just designed to permit renewable energy projects. It was designed to permit all major generation facilities, both renewable and conventional energy facilities. It was not designed A, for renewables, and B, to permit generation projects with the speed at which we need to permit them in order to meet our ambitious energy goals. So it was not working. It takes way too long, and it just wasn't designed for these types of projects. To that end, only 8 projects that have been approved to date, and there's a queue of over 50, and they tend to take many, many years to go through, frustrating pretty much everyone involved, I think. So, like I said, as part of the act that was passed in April, established the new Office of Renewable Energy Siting. So this is sort of the new Article 10, if you will, but specifically for renewable energy projects. So that the threshold is pretty much unchanged. It's any renewable energy project larger than 25 megawatts. The one difference is that new projects between 20 and 25 megawatts can opt in to this state level permitting process rather than go through local permitting. So that is one change. Anything below 20 would still be permitted at the local level though. And any projects that were in the early stages of Article 10 can choose to sort of take all their stuff, leave Article 10 and come into this new ORES process. And the reason they might want to do that is because it's going to be more streamlined and faster, as I was alluding to earlier. And I have a few links on here, and I added these at the last minute last night because I wanted to make sure that everyone had them and was aware of the most recent happenings, if you will. So in the regulations stated that within 1 year, ORES needed to adopt regulations and establish uniform standards and conditions. So these are the standards and conditions that, if a project meets them, pretty much ORES will issue a permit for them, right? You do this, you get a permit. It's very cut and dry. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of the new process is that clarity surrounding what projects need to do in order to get permitted. So those draft regulations have been published and they're open for comment. There are 5 in-person public hearings scheduled across the state and 2 virtual ones, and you can find those at the links there, ores.ny.gov/events. And the regulations are also posted on that website, ores.ny.gov/regulations. Related to that, also included in the legislation, it's not necessarily a part of ORES, but it just sort of fit here, is a host community benefits program. The citing bill called out that the Public Service Commission was to open a proceeding to establish a host community benefits program to make sure that communities hosting these large-scale renewable energy projects receive some sort of direct financial benefit. And so I'm not talking pilot payments and host community agreements like you might normally be familiar with. Of course, those will continue to be negotiated. But this is a program designed to get financial benefits directly into the pockets of residents who live in these communities. If you're interested, they posted a draft outline of how it would all work, what the dollar amounts might be, how the dollars would get divvied up amongst folks in the communities, where the boundaries are drawn. All that stuff is posted on the DBS matter there that I'm linked. And next week on November 10th, there's a stakeholder forum. And if you go to that link that's under the host community benefits program right there, all the information for joining that meeting is there if you'd like to participate. So just wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. All right, so what is ORES? How does it work? This is just a look, like a timeline of what you would expect to see when a project submits an application to ORES. Again, this is not necessarily any really fine details. I'm gonna have to refer to our colleagues over at ORES. I can't speak to it too much, but I'm happy to give you this high level outline. So someone will submit an application. ORES is required within 60 days of the application submission to determine if the application is complete or not. And this is sort of the theme of timelines, of holding them to short timelines so that we don't see those long delays that have been experienced through Article 10. And so within another 60 days of that application completeness determination, ORES will issue a draft permit for comment. And at a minimum of 60 days after that draft permit is published, so it has to be out for at least 60 days, that public comment period will end. There could be some sort of adjudicatory process if necessary. For example, if a local government has a solar law on the books and there's a substantive conflict with that solar law versus what's required through ORES, there could be some back and forth there. So that all gets sorted out, and then within 1 year of the application completeness determination, a permit must be issued. And the thing here is, and I know I've heard a lot of talk about this out there, within 1 year, ORIS has to issue a permit, and if they don't, the permit's issued by default. So it's really important that all of these timeframes are adhered to, and everyone's participating. I mean, I highly doubt that we're going to see any permits issued just by default, but that is the way the legislation is set up. And one more important note down in the bottom left-hand corner there is that 1 year time frame is for most projects, but if a project is submitted that's located on a brownfield or some other old underutilized site like that, the permit time frame goes down to 6 months. So they're gonna permit those types of projects a little bit faster. They tend to be win-wins for everyone, a little bit less controversial, so they have an accelerated time frame. So this slide, it's the same process outlined there in the arrows, but we try to point out where the local government input comes in and sort of the steps that you may be wanting to pay attention to. So right off the bat, from the very beginning, before an application can even be submitted, so over there on the bottom left, before it's complete, rather, the applicant has to demonstrate that they've had consultation with the municipality where the project's going to be located. It may sound like nothing, but you'd be surprised how many times we've worked with communities that are potentially hosting one of NYSERDA's large-scale projects, and we're reaching out to them and offering assistance, and they haven't even heard a peep from a developer yet. That's not okay. So I think this is great that they absolutely have to show that they have consulted with the municipality before even submitting their application. So that's something. The municipality also has to be notified when the draft permit is issued, and as with anyone else, has the opportunity to comment within that 60-day public comment period. And that's the point at which a municipality would indicate whether or not a proposed project is in compliance with local laws or not. And I alluded to this earlier. If you skip over to the adjudicatory process, if necessary, much like in Article 10, the municipality will have access to intervenor funding. Its total program is, NYSERDA is the implementer. And basically, what we're trying to do, it puts NYSERDA in the shoes of a developer, a renewable energy developer for the first time, which is different. Typically our services in NYSERDA have been limited to things like I was showing you earlier, guidebooks for local governments, technical assistance, financial incentives for other people to build projects, things like that. We've never actually been a project developer ourselves. Now through Build Ready, we are. So the intent here is for us to find sites all across the state that are underutilized in some way. We're talking brownfields, landfills, old abandoned commercial and industrial sites, defunct power generators, things like that. Sites that are not being used, not bringing in revenue to the towns. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here on this. And so we're intending to find these sites, assess their suitability for renewable energy projects, most likely solar for the vast majority of them. Secure site control in some way, probably mostly through leases. I don't think we're really trying to purchase any land. We have engineering firms on board that will help us to design projects, and we will even take them through permitting. So if we're finding a smaller site, that would end up going through local permitting. NYSERDA would actually end up being an applicant to a town or perhaps a city. For larger sites that we might find, NYSERDA will end up being an applicant to ORES, which is interesting. I did mention we're separate. We can actually be an applicant now, which is it's a very different role for us. So I think this is probably the one program where we can have the most direct partnership with IDAs across the state, and I hope we do. And I hope that also we can learn from you guys who have been doing things like this for, I think, quite a while now. So basically, NYSERDA is turning into a renewable energy developer via our Build Ready program. And one of the important things about this and what my role currently is working with local governments who might be hosting these projects to make sure that they're happy with the projects as proposed, that they have input, in how they're designed and that they benefit from them somehow. So of course, we would be negotiating pilot agreements and host community agreements, just like any other developer might be. We're also hoping to maybe be able to sweeten the pot a little more, given that we're the state, we might have some resources and some flexibility with regard to project financing and things like that that the private sector might not have. So really hoping that all these projects would be a win-win, perhaps win, all across the board. Oh, and, well, no, I'll get into that in a minute. So like I said, the types of sites we're looking for are these underutilized sites. There's a whole list there under number 2. Ideally, we're looking at sites that are 65 acres or larger. That could change in the future if we figure out a way to deal with smaller sites, but right now we're focusing on larger ones, at least to get started. And so this is just a little bit of an outline of the process that these sites will follow. So first we'll, identify projects. We've been doing some, since April when the siting bill passed, we've been doing some top-down, state level assessment, getting a whole list of brownfield sites, for example, across the state, and doing really high level assessments to see which ones might be an interesting fit for solar, right? And I've actually talked to Don about one of these in the country. So from there, oh, and we also have a request for information out where anyone in the public, anyone, yourselves, your neighbors, whoever can submit site nominations through our website. It's a very simple form, so we have that process as well for discovering new sites to participate in the program. From there, we'll do that, like I said, high-level desktop screening to see if it's even feasible at all. If it is, it's sort of an iterative process. We'll go to the next phase, perhaps some preliminary design and then some detailed design. Like I said, go through all the securing all the necessary permits. Along the way, we'd be negotiating pilots, host community agreements, whatever other benefits you may be able to think of with the local governments. And once the project's fully permitted, that orange triangle at the bottom there, our intent is to auction that whole package off to a private developer to build and operate the project going forward. And any of the agreements that we already had in place with the host communities, any permit conditions, that whole package is transferred over to the private developer, and they have to accept all the pre-negotiated terms. Their job is just to build and operate it as is permitted.
And Jennifer, this is Dave Zenbeck. I just want to point out for the board that this is the program that we submitted to the various sites.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Jennifer, he has reference to Feria, which you and I will, and we'll talk about going, after you get done with your presentation. But,
Yep, the Feria Mill is a great example of a site that we'd be looking at for this program for sure. Yeah. So, yep, like I said, at the end of that process, we'll be auctioning them off, soliciting bids. And in the dark blue text at the bottom here, I think it's really important to know that we are not trying to compete with the private sector. We're trying to go after sites that the private sector does not want to go after for whatever reason they don't want to deal with it, right? Maybe they don't feel like cleaning up a brownfield or what have you. These are the sites that New Jersey's Build Ready program is trying to go after. The sites no one else wants or can't do anything with. We're not gonna, we don't have a bottomless pit of funding. We're not going to be able to make magic happen on all of them, but we're gonna be trying our best. And we think that we'll be able to, do more than the private sector could do on these types of sites. To the extent that we're looking at a site and get wind that a private developer is already interested in developing a project there, we're simply gonna step away and let them do their thing. The next sort of job is to, boost the economy and have the private sector doing this work without our involvement eventually, right? Our goal would be to put ourselves out of a job. So we're not trying to compete with them, and we will walk away if we hear that there's some legitimate interest from a private developer site. And in fact, we've already done that just since the program launched. There was one site we were looking at, it was looking really promising, we're excited. Come to find out, a private developer had the same idea, and they were already going full speed ahead, so we were like, all right, go ahead, let us know if you're running into problems, and we can talk about it then. So we are sticking to our word on that. And I alluded to the community benefits. already a little bit, but it's worth reiterating. This is one of, in addition to just helping the state meet its clean energy goals, we really want these projects to bring to communities, revenue where there was none, perhaps some additional jobs where needed, all of these things. And again, this is sort of my job right now, and we're hoping to, in the very near future, release the first iteration of what we're calling a community benefits package that will outline all the different options that are available to communities hosting, not just build-ready projects, but really any redevelopment project like this is renewable. Okay, so this is just I mentioned that we have RFI on the street where anyone is welcome to submit site nominations. This is just a little snapshot of the form. It's very simple. I can't imagine it would take more than 5 minutes to fill out if you already have all the contact information for the site handy. It's not complicated. That's the link right there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So yeah, next up, send us your site nominations. We're excited for this program and to work with you and build a partnership. I think IDAs are going to be critical to helping a lot of these projects advance. So that is the end of my formal slide presentation. I hope I covered everything that Don was looking for. If I didn't, I'm happy to try and address it now or come back another time, whatever suits you.
Well, Jen, let me first thank you for participating this morning, and Dave and I have been very, very pleased with your absolute incredible response now. Anytime we've had any issues thus far, any discussions or whatever, you've been right there to help us work through that. So thanks, first of all, as a matter of course. And I know there are other questions here in the room, but I certainly want to zero in first and foremost on the build ready for the Deferian site that you and I have spoken about. Is this, from your perspective, what little you know about this at the moment, is this the kind of site that would be highly qualified, if you will?
It's the kind of site that we get highly excited about. The tricky part, like I said, is that we don't have that bottomless pit that we would love to have for funding to just completely transform any site that we're excited about. So, like, that's an example of one. I don't know how far it's gonna move down the pipeline right now. I know we talked about it, we're excited. There are definitely some potential issues, as I'm sure you're all aware of, with that site. So it's a little bit TBD right now as we do some further desktop analysis on it. But that's one where I can't promise it's gonna go forward by any stretch of the imagination, but we're gonna continue to look at it. And I think that's a perfect example of one where partnership with the IDA would most likely be absolutely critical to making it happen. It's not the type of project they sort of just take on its own.
Do you need an RFI from our energy committee?
For what?
Do you need an RFI from our energy committee for the Deferian site? Or?
No, it's already, it's on our list for looking at it. Okay. The RFI is really to give us new site nominations. It's not, a threshold step that needs to be done or anything.
How many trips on the St. Lawrence River do I have to promise you to get the nod on this site?
Yeah, I mean, you can promise me as much as you want, but I'm not ultimately making decisions. It really all depends on the technical feasibility of it. If we had a magic wand and could, do whatever we wanted with all of these sites, we would. But, again, we don't have that bottomless pit of funding resources, although I think we do a good amount. And to everyone in the room, if you could, well, the Deferian site it already had a press release from, I think the mayor of Deferian put something out, being all excited about it a couple months ago perhaps, but until NYSERDA is a little bit more assured about the feasibility of the site, we are not publicly announcing any of them until we're more sure about it, right? After going through some of those initial iterative steps of feasibility. So I wouldn't go broadcasting it too widely yet, if you don't mind.
Okay, all right, we get it. So a lot of the brownfield sites are, and I'll use the area, have outstanding tax liens where the county's in position to take title to the property for unpaid taxes. But they're not gonna take title because they don't wanna assume any future environmental liability. Is NYSERDA gonna be able to work with the federal and state agencies to indemnify or remove that potential liability so the county could take title to it and then transfer it to whoever you want without being in the chain of title for environmental liability issues?
Yeah, these are all the problems that we're gonna be trying to work through, some of which, may be insurmountable. I don't know, but the short answer is yes, we're going to try to help solve those problems. I personally don't know all of the nitty gritty details of how it gets done. I've said this to anyone I've talked to about the program over the last few months, and to use a cliche, we're building the plane while we're flying it a little bit right now. It was just announced in April, and we're already assessing sites and also trying to hire people and staff at the same time. So there's a lot going on. We actually haven't even taken on any of the new staff for the program for the openings. So I'm hoping that when they do come on, we'll have some folks that might be able to help us figure out some potential issues that you raised a little bit better. We're gonna do our best, and I think all of that stuff, again, is why partnerships with IDA is gonna be absolutely critical to this program being successful. It's the first time I sort of done anything like this. We're figuring it out as we go along.
So back to the OES, if they determine, what happens in the 60-day window, they determine an application's not complete? Is there another 60 days, or is it an open-ended timeframe till they feel the application is complete?
That's a good question. I'm not actually sure. I think I probably have to dig into the details of the draft regulations that they put out. I would assume they just say it's not complete and then, the applicant can start from the beginning again. I don't know if there's a time frame by which an application must be resubmitted if it's deemed incomplete. I'm just not sure. I don't have it all memorized, unfortunately. Maybe one of these days I will.
One more question.
Expect that.
In your recent award of your solicitations, I think the press release says the statewide average is $18 a megawatt hour. The cost of what does that mean? Is that $18 a megawatt on top of what they could market their power for?
Yeah, I'm also not necessarily the best person to be talking about that, but my understanding is that it's on top of, whatever the project will be generating on its own. It's like the NYSERDA subsidy, if you will. I'm not in that large scale renewables program, as much as I'm related to it because we assist local governments who are hosting the projects that are participating in it. The large scale renewables program has their own team and project managers, and those folks are much more intimately involved in the inner workings of the project and how the rec agreements work and all the finances and So if you want a more solid answer, I want to put you in contact with one of those, but essentially it's basically the NYSERDA incentive for the project to happen.
Because when we've negotiated pilots, we look at, we're doing, much like in the governor's original proposal, they outlined a discounted cash flow appraisal methodology for these projects. And that's what we were doing before he even announced the program. We had obtained several appraisals. So whatever their income is to that project, it's going to affect what we see as the market value of that project and then determine where we might go with a pilot.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly right. And that's the methodology that anytime someone asks us for advice on that, that's what NYSERDA would propose be considered. Because it just seems to make the most sense. The value of these projects is in the energy they generate, not in the infrastructure that's sitting on the ground, right? So that approach makes sense. And I know it ended up coming out of the legislation, but we're still happy to informally, as we always have, provide that service. So it's just not, the consultation is not required, but we're still here.
I have a question, Board Member Eliasso. Thank you for your presentation, Jennifer. And I know this is fairly exaggerated, but it's what the rules are. So at the tail end, when you have an adjudication, if there is a disagreement, doesn't meet local zoning, it appears the state gets to choose if a permit is ultimately issued, and by default, the safety valve is it gets issued in a year. And again, my exaggeration is if it doesn't meet local zoning. I guess the conundrum of our agency is it is a requirement for us to grant public funds only if it meets local zoning. So how can that be reconciled? Well, and you said you're not the right person to answer this, I get it, but that's kind of a conundrum for the IDAs that I believe, maybe I'm wrong, Joe, but I believe by law we're required for it to meet local zoning, and that reconciliation doesn't appear to be there by your safety valve of a 1 year permitted, or the adjudication is outside of local home rules. Excuse me. Not a long question.
Yeah, no, I don't have an answer, but it's an interesting point you raised that I have not considered yet, and something I think we need to, again, work together on, not necessarily build-ready related, but it's still something that's relevant for a nice sort of siting team. I'm sure you will not be the only IDA struggling with that question. I don't know the ins and outs of every, rule that you guys have to follow when you're funding a project. If that is indeed the case, that you must only fund projects that are in accordance with local zoning, that certainly would be an issue if ORED sort of overrides any of the local zoning when they're issuing a permit. I don't know if there's some exception maybe in your rules that allow for state level permitting process.
And I may be wrong, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just repeating what I believe to be true. So, but it's kind of what we worked under here as far as our rules of engagement and approaching projects.
There is language in the general municipal law to that effect, and it's one of those circumstances where there's inconsistency between two separate state rules and regulations that are going to have to be worked out at all.
Jennifer, this is Rob Elias again. I have one other question. And this is about the top line numbers. I always have difficulty. So when the state indicates 70% renewable energy, New York ISO is around 20,000 megawatts, give or take. So that means we need to grow renewable energy threefold from where we currently are. Okay, so that's fine. That's an achievable standard. However, your battery storage in that same time period is only about 15% of our total New York ISO requirements. So that means we need to keep about 55% of our existing reserves base load spinning or available. So in essence, aren't we really only replacing 15% of our energy with renewable, knowing that the other stuff, and I know this is a day-to-day, hour by hour, it changes, but it always appears misleading to me when we say 70% renewable. I think the general public thinks it's available every time you turn the switch on. And again, a long question, I know there's 7 different sides to this equation, but that's just how I would look at that matter. And I don't know if you choose not to answer, that's fine with me too, but it's just how I look at the numbers.
Yeah, I think I caught most of that. I don't know that I have a great response. I honestly think you've probably done more of the math on that than I personally have. I would actually love you sending that over to me in writing, because sure. I find it interesting.
I just, curiosity, once we get your email address, I can pose the question to you probably more intelligently and more briefly.
Yeah. Again, I think I caught most of it. If you want to, I'd be happy to send it. If you could send that over in writing, I'd be happy to look at it in a little bit more detail, because I don't know that I have a great response right now, but it sounds.
That's fine.
Yeah, there's also, I think out in front of my house, it sounds like a jackhammer of some sort in the road, which is not helping matters. It's actually shaking the house right now.
Does NYSERDA
Zoom and microphones and that, there's a lot going on.
Does NYSERDA consider nuclear renewable?
I do not believe so.
Carbon free.
It would be carbon free,
yeah.
Not renewable.
And I guess a follow-up to that question is, like right now, there's a consideration for that Champlain Hudson Power Expressway. So we got 1,000 megawatts coming from Quebec. Does that fall into the renewable side because it's being imported? Or does that sort of not need any consideration with regards to New York State's energy?
That's another one where I'm definitely not the best person to be answering.
Sorry, I've
that.
done a lot of research on
We
this.
have a large scale renewable team, they're all much better at like understanding the flow and the renewable energy credits and all that stuff. It's a whole science that I've yet to master.
Do people really believe that we will ever get away from having any carbon-based generation? I mean, I see the rolling brownouts in California, and I say, I hope we don't go down that route where they do away with conventional generation, and then all of a sudden renewables aren't the demand. And they have to do rolling brownouts. I mean, is there really the belief that we're going to get away with all carbon-based generation?
Eventually, I think we have to, because the fossil fuels will run out one day, not in our lifetime, I don't think, but eventually they will. So, I mean, we have to be heading direction. Do I think it's gonna happen anytime soon? No.
Well,
Do I want to make sweeping predictions on behalf of Minnesota? Also, probably not. But I'm optimistic
Oh, nice.
that we can solve a lot of the problems that are, brownouts and whatnot that are preventing renewable energy from coming online. And one of those complementary solutions is the battery energy storage, right?
Jen, the agency, I think I can speak for them, is particularly interested in starting something on this Deferia site, when and if you find it applicable. Is there anything you need from us, at this, moment in time to help focus on that? This has been a nagging problem in the county for years. I'm sure we're not the only one, but it seems to me, at least on the surface, to be almost an ideal test case for NYSERDA to kind of tackle. And, I don't know, I may not be here to address this, but I, for one, would like to see us form a partnership to get this thing going as soon as possible. Is that something we could do, you think?
Yeah, I'd keep the conversation going. I have to check with my colleagues. Like I mentioned, my role in Build Ready is really this sort of local government outreach role. It's a little bit higher level. Some of my colleagues at NYSERDA are more in the nitty gritty details of the site analysis and how much it will potentially hold and, what it will cost versus what kind of revenue it could bring in, all that, the cost benefit analysis, all that stuff. I'm not sure exactly where we are at with that site right now, so I'd have to circle back with them, but I agree with you. It's on its surface, it seems like an absolutely perfect build ready project. If we could make it happen, I'd want to, run all over the place bragging about it. It doesn't hurt that, I grew up in the Army and actually spent a few years of my life living in this area as a kid. So not that would influence any decision making, but it makes it a little bit more fun. So I would love to see something done with that. We're going to try our best, but I don't know as to the feasibility of that particular site right now. I'm not sure. But we'll keep the conversation going, please. I'm just not sure where we landed on that feasibility assessment just now. We're trying to go after, in the very beginning of this program, like I said, building the plane while we're flagging it, we're trying to get some of this perhaps slightly easier sites going first to get some traction. As ideal as the period is, I don't know if it's one of the easier sites for us to get going right off the bat, so we'll see.
Jennifer, I got a question I think you can answer. At Walter, IDA. On your ready build structure, as you work down through the process and it becomes finalized, and you're ready to hit the auction stage of it, as far as selling those interests to a developer, is your intent, the value of that auction piece of the pie, would you say that you're trying to recoup your administrative costs to get to that point, and that's kind of the opportunity of income you hope to derive from that process, or do you think it'd be a much higher value than that?
We are trying to get some of the funding back that NYSERDA spends doing the redevelopment work on the project, and also and then on top of that, sell the project at market value. So the idea is in the long run that the Build Ready program would be somewhat self-sustaining, so we're not just dumping money into these projects and then, handing them out to developers. We are trying to recoup whatever we spent redeveloping them to the extent possible. Of course, there are gonna be projects where we spend money doing pre-development work on them and then they never go forward. So we're probably gonna end up spending some, but the idea is to try and get our money back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, I think we've, for this time, anyway, covered most of the questions. I think all of us in the room, and there are many, thank you for really, a great broad overview of what's being planned. And we certainly know that, in the future, we'll be working closely with you and your office, and of course, the folks at Jcida, and we remain ready to do so. So think of us often, would you please? We appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'll get it done.
All right, thank you, Jen. We appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, everybody, for taking time to listen. I think that's important. So,
Okay, we're still in the LDC. Anything else for the LDC?
Unfinished business,
Unfinished business.
the Small Business Assistance Program in Clayton. I did the informal survey, polled about 10 businesses, and at this time, no one has any need for the funding. But given the construction project is really going to go through the rest of the winter, I thought we might be able to leave it open until next spring, until the project is totally complete, in case that there is any other interest, and anyone comes forward and is interested in the loan. Right now, all the businesses that I contacted said they had a great year. Fortunately, COVID hit during the same construction timeframe, so, but I would just request of the board that we could leave it open. We may put it on our CLDC website. We have not advertised it. But yeah, through word of mouth, if it does come up and someone does approach us, I'd like to still be able to offer
we can have a wasn't like a calendar. We had a closest program that's, there was no official closing.
Just make sure that we didn't need to take any other action, kind of like extend it.
All the duration on it.
Basically talk about it through the construction
Put
period.
some of the money aside, if people want to come, the sum has been $0. So.
Yeah.
It's incredible that the folks in Clayton have actually seen an uptick in business in some cases. As a result of the COVID construction of the whole thing, we thought we were gonna see some damage there as we initially thought.
it. And I think a lot of these businesses that I spoke to were, PPP is still on the horizon, perhaps for another round. If that ever comes through, if Congress can ever come to negotiation. So they don't want to take on another loan. They would rather see if they can get the grant program like that. So everyone is still in a holding pattern.
Yeah, we don't encourage a lot of debt. It's not helping people in the long
Dave, I would just like to mention that the town budget, which went through finance and rules last night, passed the Tuesday, carries the same level of funding for this agency as it did the previous.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bill, thank
Your
you.
retirement gift, Don. Scott said thank you.
You just lifted 20 pounds off my shoulder. Not my shoulder, poor David's shoulder.
So we came up with this.
Quick question, I don't know, the other agencies, county, looking across the board cuts, most agencies.
No, we ain't got any.
That's what they.
Great. Great. Anything else for the LDC?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. With that, I'll call the order of the Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency. Once again, this is Thursday, November 5th, our monthly board meeting. Here is the floor. Received our minutes from both our October 1st and October 15th meeting.
One minor correction, I'm going to pass it to Peggy, but in my brief thing about studies, we do not have offices in Antarctica or and it says in all continents except Antarctica.
Okay.
We're not that good.
And not technically, we're talking about opening a new office down there.
Well, I was going to hire you as a consultant to move to our Antarctica office.
Don't tell me.
Hey, it's great, all the time what you need.
Yeah,
Probably politically incorrect.
Okay. Is that a motion with that correction?
Yeah, with, I just wanted to make that minor correction, yes.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Treasurer.
Okay, page 71 of your board package, questions. So our current budget is 366,000 higher than the prior year. 109,000 per month is a break-even threshold. You can see right now, we've only achieved some minor interest amounts. We've got some bigger things coming through and, you know, some pilots that will close. So it's a fairly realistic budget that we beat up pretty good back in whenever August, whenever we went through this. So we've got a long ways to go on the revenue side. On the expense side, we're about 307,000 higher than last year's budget as a starting point. Again, break-even budget for 190,000 a month on a break-even basis. Spending, we spent just under 9,000 less than that. So we're spending a little less than budgeting. Revenue over expenses show a loss currently just because we haven't achieved any revenue of any significance. Page 72 of your packet, your balance sheet, quick assets for 158,000 higher than prior period. Receivables 75,000 lower than prior period, and then the other items are 44,000 higher, which equates to current assets being 126,000 higher than prior period. Total assets 123,000 higher than prior period. Total current liabilities about 218,000 higher than prior period. Again, most of that pilot money is payable, which will not become a liability once they're paid out. Total capital is 95,000 lower than prior period. Page 74, 74 of the package is just a snapshot of the building we sit in. And we talked about that earlier, that the budget was based on us holding it for the whole year. It seems like maybe within 6 weeks that might not be the case, and these expenses will dwindle to next year to nothing. I do have a question, Lyle, and this is something I probably should have caught when we went through the budgeting. And I believe the answer is we assumed we weren't going to own this through the winter. So we budgeted electric, which we put gas, about 22,000, but we spent about 61,000 last year. That was because we expected to kind of be rid of the expenses. Okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to refresh my memory of that. Page 76, 7, and really all the way down through are really just major loans and various programs. A question, there's one minor Second Harbor Trading Company. For the last few months, it says they won't hold the same amount, but it says current, they're on a moratorium or?
Well, we made a deal with them, they're paying principal only.
Okay.
Did this years ago, and they're actually paid ahead.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it fell under some of the various, what I'll call block moratoriums that we offer.
This is a special deal.
Okay. Nothing else, so I would make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Second. Questions or discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Audit committee. Once again, we have resolution number 11.05.2020.01 to engage the auditors for the annual audit. And once again, Bowers and Company. Entertain a motion or a second for this.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Loan review.
We met on October 27th. Mr. McNeely is actually here. Running board, RBM manufacturing, running board manufacturing. Is the M redundant?
It's front board marketing.
Oh, marketing, okay. I was, thought that was the M was manufacturing. I just didn't want to be redundant in the company name, sorry. So we entertained a couple of variances from our normal loan programs. During loan review, there were a couple of questions. There were some revised documents submitted which didn't become part of the board report, so I'll make a couple of minor corrections to the loan review package that was presented just to update us to those. So we asked a couple questions on the prior loan. There was a projection of 9 jobs, we've actually created 12 according to the information here, so they exceeded what was presented. That was a great investment. They're asking for an additional 200,000, which staff is recommending to combine into one $400,000 loan interest over 12 months for 3% for 5 years. We asked a couple questions about the jobs that were in the pro forma statements, the key back, and turning them into full-time equivalent. They're again going to be 12 additional jobs for the additional section of the loan over. I think it was 3 or greater. 4, I forget now. 3, yeah. So with all of the information and the minor corrections to the information that was presented in our board packet, it was and remains a very good investment. And our loan review recommended to move it to the full board for consideration to pass the motion to move this forward.
Okay, resolution number 11.05, 2020.02. Resolution for authorizing a revolving loan to Earth Manufacturing Corporation. Amount of $200,000, which would be added to their existing $200,000 loan. So it's a combined amount of $400,000. Interest only for 12 months, 3% for 5 years after that. And this is an exception to our normal terms. Entertained motion in a second.
I'll move it as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? Questions? Yes.
Perhaps you can convince me. One concern I have with our agency, the second round of $200,000 is, it's my understanding that the company's in a good financial position as far as personal assets. Why would this loan be applicable in a private bank for the additional $200,000 versus us investing $400,000 in one? We've got a couple of projects coming up where it really potentially use all those remaining reserves we have. And I guess my question is, why are we putting all the eggs in one basket in the banks? Step up and share this responsibility. Now, I guess the interest only for 12 months, but, you know, 400,000, granted, the jobs, great company. Your pro forma almost looks too good to be true. So all of that, you know, we could say it's a low risk, but why wouldn't, my baseline question is, why wouldn't banks step up and give it 200,000?
Yes.
Anyone want
Sure,
to
anybody that's willing to answer it.
Anyone?
Well, let me-
Probably better for,
Let me take a shot at Harvard. First of all, we've had a relationship with this family for 25, 30 years, maybe, you know. And all through those periods of time, there have been changes, expansions, wilds, all kinds of things. And during each one of those iterations, these folks have honored their obligations. So from a background point of view, and this doesn't directly answer your question, I'll get to it, but from a history point of view, Cal has, in my personal view, has demonstrated the willingness to be. It's not just a speculation. I mean, we've had this relationship for a long time, he and his brother, family, everybody. So that's been a good relationship. The other aspect that triggers a reason to support this is that this is a local company with a higher tech local concept, which is being developed and marketed across the United States. It's a Watertown homegrown concept, which is not often brought to us as an agency to support. And so based on the fact that this seems to be an area that could be reasonably expected to develop substantially over time, we thought it would be worth the additional tried to demonstrate that, and I think Cal tried to demonstrate that to the local people. That was part of it. Now, those same logic things that we just talked about here would apply to a bank loan, too, a local bank. Now, why it was done with us, I suspect was more of an ease of the process than anything else, but I really don't know it. And, Mrs. Powers has left, so I can't really answer this. So, Cal, do you want to tell us why you came to us as opposed to a bank in this instance? Talk a little bit.
Well, we do bank and Markham Savings Bank, we get right with Mark from our way. And, it's a new relationship with Mark since I started doing business before that. And I think just ease is one reason, the attractability of the loan. But, you know, we do have loans from Markham Savings Bank, so a key partner. And, you know, I'm not sure how much more willing they are to go out on the limb on a startup. They don't have history with me. So,
Part of what we debated, there was a lot of questions about jobs and whatever too. I had an initial similar concern about making variance of such a large amount. But looking at the additional 200,000 to create 9 jobs, 12 were actually created. So it was a very good return on the investment now. COVID hit, there really too much except some interest fees, this, that, and the other. While is looked at the personal branch from new family, we're in second position, so you can say, oh, this if something happens, but he feels very adamant that the personal guarantee was stronger. I mean, again, having to deal with banks very frequently in my life, fortunately. I think banks treat some of that stuff a little bit less significant or important in regards to the relationship. I mean, they're in business to make money, quick money. We're in business to create jobs and make money along the way and create partnerships for long term with persons like Mr. Healy and his family. So taking all of that into account, we debate a lot of this. And knowing that we're in a very strong position with personal guarantees, and there was a, you know, if there was 9 jobs with the first 200K and you're doing create one, and you would say chalk it up to COVID, but we'd be, well, not just really be what his projections were, and some of the things that you didn't hear in the overview. He's since sold a couple franchises, he's got 5 or 7 online. So we debated, like, are you realistic with the whatever 14, I forget the exact number, but the 14 franchises you sell, and talk about a number of different things. And, let's put it this way, he stopped this really well. I don't think he's become successful in other endeavors by just becoming a startup, getting a loan, you know, going on a limb. So we debated a lot of this. I kind of didn't vocalize what you actually did, but I had a similar concern in the back of my mind about how much can you invest in one organization. And, I felt satisfied, and I feel like I'm the most difficult person to satisfy. I'll say it, I'm the most difficult person to satisfy in the room. I mean, you can ask my mother, I'll tell you that.
Your poor mother.
Yeah, I know. God bless her.
You're a veteran of this war to develop on. And I know for a fact that question is in the back of your mind, it's in the back of every single individual in this. You know, we have a limited amount of resources. You and I know we've got some good things coming, which I don't know where the hell we're going to get money for some of them. Talk about them. So value that comment, and I think we've all tried to weigh that. Banks are certainly less risk averse than we are. And as this guy said, we're interested in trying to generate jobs, and this guy is trying to do it. And so maybe a little farther into this than maybe we should, but my gut telling me it's worth it. It's a good job. I mean,
The 400,000 term now is the period of it. It's interest only 1 year, right? And then it's 5 years.
It's a 5-year.
So it's a short.
Yeah, and remember, the 200,000 was granted earlier this year or late last year?
About a year ago.
Yeah, so I mean, we're really looking at an additional 200,000, it could just be 2 separate phone applications. Not
And besides that, we haven't had an application for a loan other than from Calvin for the last 2 years.
Because these are under, if this was under micro enterprise where we got no funds, this is RLF, right? So
Yes.
we've got a significant amount of money here.
Great.
That's the whole purpose of it. Getting interest in the RLF loan fund is, I guess, nice for a balance sheet, but it's not what the purpose of the agency is. You've said that a million times, we need to leverage the capital into things, people, assets.
If we're getting interest from the money sitting in the bank, we don't keep it.
So we have to turn that back.
Turn back, interest from a loan out there,
That's just a good point. Revenue,
we get to keep.
But these are a lot of the things that we're debating in some roundabout way, even as eloquent, we're all talking about.
Well, I look at the fact that we haven't had a lot of requests, but still, we're all seeing signs of what I still refer to with our economy. And I think there's going to be substantial interest in startups coming down the pike. And I question whether leverage there.
So that's why it's important to get this building closed and to get some less in here. And we're talking about millions of dollars that we all of a sudden redeploy for various things you're talking about. We need other income versus just what's in our savings and bank accounts right now. We need to get this building closed, we need to get this lease going. I mean, we can generate $1.5 million in additional capital that can turn into leverage $5 million of loans and the employment and this, that, and the other, all that little one-off stuff.
Hey, I got a promise for $1 million check. That's good.
Sure, I'll write it to you tomorrow.
No, I really did.
I had a conversation with John Jennings, who's on our board, he's not here right now, after our zone review meeting. And it was a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable, I mean, because we both moved to this board, but he wanted a little more clarification from you, if possible, as to your projections on the amount of franchises that you feel you're going to be able to do over the next 5 to 6 years. Okay, could you give us something? Some of that?
Yeah, my goal last year was 10, I did 0. So therefore my goal this year is still 10. And when I came here 2 weeks ago, we had 2 closed earlier this year. That's just the third one I committed, Texas, just north of Dallas. Since then, fourth one was Georgia, just north of Atlanta. I've got 8 solid conversations right now. They're real serious. Out of that, I'm sure I'm going to 2 or 3, 4, maybe 6. I've been running out of babies this year. And so we've got a pipeline now. We've got about 35 conversations going on. We get inquiries now daily. It took about a year to really figure out how to market this thing, how to get into broker groups, consultant groups. And now we've tapped into 3 of these 4 deals with the same consultant group. The third one was a different consultant group. And the idea is people are looking to buy franchises every day. So they come into consultant groups, brokers, they help them buy the franchise. And us being new, and we're not for everybody, we're doing a whole track record. We're moving fast. Martin thinks that why are you moving so fast? I said, because we're the first to franchise a business like this. We'll get out in front, we'll set the pace. So those will follow, just like a highlight. But we'll be the leader here. We're moving fast. We're making mistakes fast. We're correcting. And my goal is 100 franchises by the end of 2023. That's only 2 per state. It calls from Canada. Not pursuing that today, but home business in Canada. I will once we get some traction down here. That allows us to support in the past. Just got a little communication going on. We are approved in Puerto Rico. We're approved in 41 states. DC, Puerto Rico.
Mr. McNeely, during the loan review committee, to actually answer the question had been asked, or it doesn't think that you were asked a question, how many do you need to sell a year to kind of remain status quo and be, break even and be a going concern? Could you re-answer that question?
That's about 10.
Okay. Okay. So you need to 10 a year consistent.
Yeah. Well, you've answered a lot of my concerns. I can support it. I accelerated payout for that, which is out of the box, but still, I mean, think about that, because we can use it next year as well. That'll start another. The other thing, I think you're missing an opportunity. Have you considered putting them on water? And the boats
People
and
send me
everything?
pictures all the time, like, this is Miami.
Sure.
Should we consider
So
that?
I think of the St. Lawrence River in the summer, and it's like, well, what you're doing, it's like, my guy, you said that right up on a boat. You talk about attention. I mean, far more than the street.
It's hard, I'm not just trying to stay focused. With one mile, get that up and running. We've got all kinds of ideas. Really good.
Okay.
Can I
That's
ask-
my concern.
Did you do the NBC sign?
Yes, we did. And big.
That looks great.
We, now that we're being so generous to you, can we get a deal on, a sign promoting Jefferson County on one of your trucks?
Sure, he's already doing it. Sure.
Good.
Are you considering that driving up or down the industrial park entrance? We can have a sign that doesn't require buying land.
You're always thinking.
Nothing illegal about that, Joe, is there?
Okay. On the resolution. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. Thank you.
Take over. We accept the coffee anytime you're willing to throw it our way.
Okay. We're actually going to do a photo shoot at noon today out Washington Airport, space the runway. I just painted the price still painted. Worry about there's some trucks coming down the runway. We're going to be in a cover of a magazine in February. This opportunity's taken off. It's kind of fun. Yeah, keep in mind that.
Good idea.
Thanks, so.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Thanks, Cal.
Take care.
Resolution number 1105, 2020.03 is a resolution for authorizing a write-off of micro enterprise loan fund to Above Reality Virtual Sports Complex. It's the outstanding balance of $33,393.49.
I'll move it.
Second.
Just, I should have covered this under the loan.
No, that's fine. I'll let you do that.
Okay, I wait for you to read it. So we did discuss this as well. Lyle recommended that this amount be retroactive to 30th September, so it'd be written off last year's.
Yeah.
That's still the same recommendation. Okay, that's what I thought. We really have no recourse on this. The applicant was considered a theater by the state. They weren't allowed to have people come in and actually use their great environment. And they declared chapter whatever 711, I don't know what it is, but one of those bankruptcy protections, we have no recourse. So once they sell off the machines, there may or may not be some money left over, but Lyle kind of continues to shake his head. We might get enough to pay for the coffee at the end of the table when we're all said and done. And anyway, so we recommended to move it to the full board as a,
This is a case of the perfect storm. This young man was a veteran.
Bronze Star recently.
Worked hard all his life, got his wife invested in all this. They put a lot of money in it, and the COVID thing came in and basically knocked him completely off the farm. So it's a sad circumstance.
On the resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. I'm going to jump ahead again. We get resolution number 1105, 2020.04, resolution to adopt the retention and disposition. That's that one. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Back to unfinished business. We've already talked about 146 and the Y project. New York State Credit Program.
Well, I don't mind telling you, I am concerned about this. I've expressed this to the board in the past. There were 64 projects given money under the READY program. 5% of the total budget is supposed to be a local government match, which is supposed to be funded by mechanisms here at the IDA. The problem is that these mechanisms are hampered by the legal aspects of what we do. Some of these projects are actually completed, some are in the process of being done, some are yet to be done. But we're somewhat limited in terms of how we can respond. We can lend the money, but let's assume, for example, that their loan was only $10,000. If we lent $10,000 to each one, that's $640,000. Of that $640,000, we have to demonstrate that 5% is our cost to administer them. We can't deduct the $640,000. We only can deduct what we estimate the cost for generation of that loan is, the application fee, legal fees, that kind of thing, anything that we can forego. So we're trying, frankly, at the moment, to figure out how in the hell we're going to do this. And frankly, I don't have a good answer yet. I just don't know. I've asked everyone, several legal firms, and frankly, ESD and others, is just how we're supposed to do this. What I'm afraid of is that, I walk out the door, I leave you with this mess, and then 2 years down the road, we get an audit from the comptroller, and he says, how are you doing funding this program? It's not an IDA program. Yeah, well, right. But so, and this is, this is a real time issue. We're getting requests now. Dave has talked to 3 or 4 of these clients.
I have an application for a loan.
Miles got some of the
It's a
big
small loan,
already
it's
started.
$700.
This came up during the annual review, and there was a suggestion that was brought forward, and we don't know the reality of this, but either myself or Ken jointly kind of came up with the idea at the same time. Is there's 8 municipalities. This is a municipal problem. I know the county asked us to try to solve for Shepherd's problem. We discussed the concept of having municipalities come to us to seek the underwriting of their amount. There's $407,000 amongst those 8 municipalities. Now, 3 of them are very heavily weighted towards the amount of that total. But since we are allowed, I believe, in some capacity to deal with municipal projects, it would be far easier to deal with that on whatever legal basis we are allowed to loan money to municipalities versus what you echoed. Getting these 64 applicants to actually even put an application in, I think will never occur. We have to more issue, half the jobs are done. Some of these projects are for things that occurred in 2017. Let's not forget that. So I don't know that there's an answer on each individual, but the greater question, and maybe we have to do some research, Joe, is can we actually deal with this on a municipal basis? If the town of Alexandria came to us and said, we need $140,000 to meet our local grant, how do we and could we ever find a way under our statutes to do that?
Well, there's also the underlying problem for municipalities. They can't fund private projects. So, I don't know how you get around that. Municipalities can't directly fund private projects. Violates capital.
Yeah. But if it were to flow through the municipality, or if the loan were structured in a way that these 10 applicants, not just me, 10 applicants in the town of Alexandria needed to borrow $140,000 to fund their state requirement. Because what ends up happening is there's 2 things. There's a safety valve that the state says, if you get a letter from your mom that says you tried really hard and couldn't get money, we'll consider waiving it. At the end of the day, the applicant's just going to get 95% of their 50%. The applicants will fund at risk. The municipalities and this agency are. But we all agree we don't want to put the applicants under the rest, because as it is, they've had crappy business for the last couple of years. They're paying for things that occurred over the last couple of years, and now they're trying to make significant investments. I have an idea that there's probably about 1,000 jobs that, involved with this $8.9 million the county of Jefferson granted. So a $400,000 investment by this agency in the municipalities, pretty damn good return.
The other element of this too is that at least the guidelines do say that if you're unable to get that 5%, you can document their best faith effort to get that. And so I was talking to the project last night, I haven't had a chance to talk down on this. They only need like $4,100 for their 5%. Because I have to borrow $55,000 to reduce this rate to be able to say I met that 5%. Or, you know, to meet it from the sales tax exemption, if it's a smaller project. I mean, Joe's investigating for us right now, is there a more streamlined version to do an agent agreement? So otherwise, the legal costs exceed the benefit of the sales tax.
So I feel like
with that, perhaps an applicant can say,
sales tax,
I've made my best effort.
stuff. I think those are too complicated, too elongated of an application, too much for the staff to consider, too many meetings to deal with it versus just go to the head of the snake and just say, okay, there's 8 municipalities, they're really the ones that the state said you need to come up with a local batch. Now, I agree with you,
That's the
Joe.
problem. The state told them to do something they can't.
I know, that's what it's like, how can the
That's the
state say
problem.
municipality can fund a local?
That's the problem.
Guess who's in the middle?
Yeah, well, exactly.
And that,
We're just agents of the county, this is Bill's problem.
last night, as part of the discussion, we were talking about solar projects. I happened to mention to Kevin McCullough, Attorney McCullough, I said, you know, supposing the agency became somehow a conduit so that public entities, for example, like a town, could allow the IDA to use a truck, you know, as an in-kind.
If you bring it up to the town level, town of Alexandria is making a number of $140,000. Now you're talking about a significant amount of money that fits other loan funds we have, and it's municipal, and
Then it becomes municipal funds. They can't directly.
Yeah.
Can they send those funds to New York State to people with 5%?
They could do that.
That's
that's what I'm kind of asking.
Here's what they tell us, Paul. Because there was 2 elements to this program. One was a municipal element that they got funds for projects and so on, and the local governments have already contributed 5% to that. That's what they say, to that piece of the pie.
So Joe, is there a legal aspect if, let's say we could come up with $407,000 on behalf of all the municipalities, money went directly to the state on behalf of whatever the municipalities were, so that there was a way of now taking in the town of Alexandria, there's 15 projects that it gets applied. I mean, is this so complicated it will never work no matter which way we try?
Well, it's not like we need to send money to the state at 5%. Is that what you just said?
Well, I was trying to find a way, because if it goes to the municipality,
5% has to go towards the project.
correct.
Okay? But they created a program that's impossible to satisfy. What it boils down to. It's another one of these examples of it wasn't thought through, so when they put the impetus on the local match, they first of all didn't give any guidance on how to get there. They didn't think it through. The municipalities are prohibited from using municipal funds to foster private development. So state could have figured, if they thought the program through and provided guidance, then we'd have something to work on. But they did, they just threw this obligation on the local government.
So as an example, let's say you got a $400,000 project, you got a $200,000 state grant. It means the recipient has to come up with $190,000, and the 5%.
Yeah, the 10 comes from the town that we're in, and everything else.
Right. And what I was gonna suggest was down, we had to talk later, after talking to 5 last night, 20, the idea of maybe helping this applicant write a letter to say, you know, document, hey, we looked at this, we looked at that, it's gonna cost us more, it's 5% of the IDA. We made our best faith effort, that's twice your requirement. And then the applicant, the project, they just, for a stone limit, they just pay that 5% on their own and try to borrow additional money they don't need to borrow.
Couple of thoughts on this. First of all, we have raised this issue for 6 months. We have tried to raise some kind of an affirmation, like Joe just said, that created a problem which is almost impossible to fix. Point one. Point point too is if all 64 applicants say, gee, I have tried, failed, guess what?
Yeah.
There's gonna be
The state will know what to fix.
because the governor was the one who pushed ESD to get us into this position. He wanted 20%.
But maybe the answer is there's no legal means to reimburse. It's probably the better and factual answer. There's lots of ways to raise the money.
And it all boils down to what they'll consider the local match. I mean, most of these municipalities have gone out in the municipal ready program to improve their local infrastructure that was damaged by the high water. And would they consider those efforts as part of the local match to facilitate credit? I mean, those are the types of things that need to be considered at the state level. Because I guarantee you, almost every single one of these municipalities went out and got their own ready grant to fix the problems that are impacting not only them, but the private developers that are impacted too. So if they would think out the box and let us use those criteria for a local match, I think they'd all be satisfied.
Dave Converse brought up, and I believe I'll say this correctly, no one of the recipients. And we had thought maybe that $200,000 grant they would get, they would just deduct 5% one night, just like Dave said. You indicated that until they actually wrote a check for $10,000 to the state, from the municipality.
Not to the state, Rob, not to the state, not to the state.
To whomever, whatever. But what is that? Basically, they can't get their money from the state until the municipal match.
That's not an allowable function. They can't reduce the grant by 5% to say it's matched. They can't do it.
Because that would be the simple answer. If the state put that safety valve in there, if you want to fund 55% of the project, we're gonna give you, but they haven't actually even put that safety valve in there. So that the applicant can't even get the grant money that was so pledged to them.
We're not gonna.
This is how flawed.
Yeah, we're not gonna
the
settle
process
this right now, but let me put this out. I like Dave's idea. We're not the only municipality in the state that's gonna end up with the same thing. So let's throw this back to the state. Let's put 64 letters back to the state. It says, we've tried, we've done our best, boom. And that's gonna have to, now the state's gonna have to look at it a different way.
Yeah, and has anyone checked to see if anybody's received a dime of a private individual out of this fund reimbursement for the work they've done? And if they did, how did they get there?
But that might be a good investigation.
None of the monies have been distributed as far as we know, Paul. At least the one. What they got is last week they got a letter from ESD saying this is your requirement in order to qualify. You qualify, but you got to do blank. And of course, the letter contained the fact that the IDA said to fill in this private thing. And when Mr. Gray offered that the IDA would do this was 8 months ago. A year ago, when the project was being developed, we had time to plan, and there was all kinds of considerations being, and since then, everything blew up in our face. So now, it's a far different ballgame, but we're still committed to do it.
Well, we're committed to do what we can. I don't think it was ever expected that we would be the only avenue to provide part of that 5% match. We were looking at, we waive sales tax, and that is 30% of their money they gotta come up with.
Whatever
That would be thrown in the
program
pot.
we have, or.
We also set donations from private individuals as an agency.
No.
So maybe
IDA
they couldn't give us the 10 grand and then us grant it back.
The IDA can, the LDC.
I won't go to LDC.
Can the IDA accept it if they don't solicit? Like some people will make gifts to municipality. The municipality can't solicit it, but if someone.
Well,
I don't believe so.
Well, yeah,
I don't believe so. We checked this all the time.
you can't solicit first.
Right, I know that.
So even if an applicant right now wanted, say the contractor was ready, almost or whatever, could they, is the pool of funds actually there, or is it just smoke and mirrors? If they out of their pocket, right,
It's the state.
right?
I think that they've done that too. I think a number of them have already done the projects.
And they have gotten the money?
Have not.
No.
So the really issue is, it's smoke and mirrors, there's no money in the fund.
Well, it may not be smoke and mirrors, it may just be procedurally flawed, that it's due, and never get money because of what happened.
Well, if the people write the check and covered their 5%.
It's gotta be municipal, that was actually the issue, it's gotta come from the municipality or the local max, or whatever.
They created a condition that's impossible.
And the other thing is, these people are planning for construction season in the spring. And in order to get most of these things, like floating docks, like this, that, and the other thing, those orders have to go in now.
No, for sure.
Near future.
Well, the municipalities declare some state of emergency, and then, help fund the private property.
Probably, if the state of emergency is passed.
But this is in effect from a state of emergency. so
Yeah, but the state of
it doesn't matter.
emergency itself is wrong.
Well, maybe,
At least for now.
I like Dave's idea, we should be checking
Yeah.
with the Association of Counties, or Association of Towns to see how everyone's doing with it. And go from there, and see how they're doing, maybe we should have, Don call his friend, my former mayor, and see if she can do a Zoom meeting, find out what we're struggling with this. Maybe we have to ask the governor to do an executive order waiving, that portion of the Constitution.
Or
I think
maybe
you're gonna see
procedurally
something like
involved.
that, Paul, I hate to say it.
Joe, if a local development board, like, I'll use Townsfield or Clayton, there's two LDCs there, are they considered part of this? Are they a local agency?
No, they're a not-for-profit corporation.
So they're not part of, they couldn't actually give the
Most
$10,000.
of them have a contract with the local
I
municipality.
think they could.
Because I'm wondering if the answer is
LDC,
create a local development force.
See, most of the LDCs, or at least the ones that I'm familiar with, have a contract with the local municipality. It helps fund them.
Yeah.
It funds them directly, which is legitimate,
Yeah.
it's economic development. And then, the local development corporations could participate in the local match.
So I know there's one in Clayton Clayton and Hounsfield.
Yeah.
If they somehow participated through their local LDC, that fund for might not come close.
Well, mine, I guess you'd have to get the answer from the state whether that's gonna qualify.
Okay. But there's nothing illegal in your mind.
Well, there's nothing illegal about the LDC.
No, I meant about them granting money to private projects. That was really the genesis of the question. Because I know municipalities,
They've got the authority to do so.
so I wonder if 8 LDCs are maybe a way to satisfy.
Not every one of those river communities and lake communities have an LDC.
No.
Yeah.
No, Alexandria doesn't have one.
Clayton LDC.
There's really two.
Clayton LDC has no money.
Yeah, but one LDC, could have one LDC that has a project area.
If their formation documents call for that.
Well, our LDC has one that.
Because I think local goes right up to the county level. It's not just at.
So why would we need to create why would we?
It wouldn't if the LDC's territory includes the entire county, then they could.
If the Jefferson County LDC laws, if the local is up to the county level, I believe, that could be, they give zero guidance. You could read that and interpret it 6 different ways. It's the most poorly written document that the state has put out there.
Well, to Paul's point, I think we don't have enough information for that. And
Still have.
I'm once again, I'm gonna reach out to Molly and see if she can give us some guidance here, because at this point in time, it's a conundrum. I don't know how to solve it, frankly. I know there are lots of theories out there, but the question is, are they gonna stand the test of time? That's what worries me. You remember 3, 4, 5 years ago, we got into this mess when the governor said, you guys need to consolidate your economic development opportunities. We did that, and then ended up getting in trouble, and it cost us $200,000 to bail ourselves out of jail. So I don't want to put the agency there. So we need some better clarity, and I just don't have.
Just play the coffee and jail.
Do you have any friends there?
Executive session about, property acquisition at the end of the park?
We can. I think we should.
I think we should have
Okay.
a brief discussion. I would move that we enter into executive session, any board members and staff that wants to stay, to discuss, potential acquisition of real property.
Do you want to add counsel?
Real property and acquisition. There would be an acquisition and an easement or a right. I don't expect her to work weeks. I can't say no. I don't expect it to be long. Okay. One was a fee acquisition, right?
Yeah.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed?
Thanks.